Ohio State whooped up on Minnesota 37-3 here in its home finale. Michigan had a much tougher problem with Maryland, although Ohio State can sympathize with that, having done it a couple times in the last 5 years. They win 31-24, have some guys get banged up along the way. Teams that are, I wouldn't say they're heading in opposite trajectories, but one seems to have more momentum than the other right now. And obviously, Michigan has some self-inflicted issues going on right now with the NCAA investigations that it's brought upon itself and gotten one assistant coach fired and its head coach suspended, and other things who knows what's going to come out in the week ahead, because Friday was a pretty busy day for some of us just following that stuff from afar. So, Andrew, I'm going to start with you, because this whole season has been about Ohio State starting where it was, having the nucleus of a team that could absolutely compete for a national championship, but with issues that had to be corrected in a sort of systematic way in order to get to Week 12 and have a chance to go into Ann Arbor and win the biggest game in college football this year. Do you think this is starting to sync up in a favorable way for Ohio State?
Well, the defense has certainly been at a level that you felt comfortable with for the last month. 6 months or 6 weeks. Like at what point did you guys think the defense was at this level? Because for me, it was the Penn State game. For me, I looked at this defense and I'm like, all right, I'm good. I got no concerns about what this defense can do. The most points they've allowed this year is 17. There was nothing I could have learned, frankly, from the Michigan State game and the Minnesota game and even kind of the Rutgers game, where you look at and go, man, what can this defense do to prove to me that they're ready for the Michigan? They did that weeks ago. So the defense the defense is mostly healthy going into that game. You feel good about where the defense is at. The offense, I think, is they're getting close to what they could be, and they're reaching a level that they had not reached all season. The question is it enough? I personally think it is, with where this defense is, with what TreVeyon Henderson has done to this offense the last couple of weeks. It just gives you that explosiveness that they have not had. Ryan Day said today in his post-game press conference that Emeka Egbuka, he looked as close to 100% as he's going to get. And Kyle McCord kind of said the same thing. So you feel good about where your receivers are at health-wise. TreVeyon Henderson has done a really good job these last couple of weeks. The offensive line is playing better than they have all year. I think you have to feel good about where this team is at. Offensively, I still have questions. I'm still curious to see what it looks like and how much progress they have really made, because Michigan is a very good defense. But I think I'm there with Ohio State. I think I look at this game and say, you know what? They are playing their best football I think that they've played this year in terms of complementary football, offense and defense.
Yeah, and it's not just about where Ohio State is. It's obviously about where Michigan is too, and they've just looked a lot more vulnerable in a lot of ways the last couple of weeks. You know, the Penn State win that they had going on the road, where they don't throw the ball for the last 38 minutes of that game or whatever it was, and today just not being able to put away a team as vulnerable itself as Maryland, and that as prone to shooting itself in the foot as Maryland is, and Michigan kind of kept giving them chances. Credit to Maryland for the way it played, but that's kind of what I'm talking about here. Like, does it seem to be, after 2 years, and listen, there were things that were going on that might have affected how those games went. It's hard to maybe put those games in the same perspective as we did the last 2 years. Time will tell as we learn more about that. But does it seem to be, because last year Ohio State came out of that Maryland game with a lot of questions, their own tough game at Maryland that didn't get put away until the very end. Some guys banged up, important guys banged up. Matt Jones was banged up. TreVeyon Henderson and Mayan Williams were banged up. Like, does it seem to be maybe lining up in a more favorable way this time for Ohio State?
I think my one nerves is that I think we were standing here 2 years ago after the Michigan State game and saying the exact same thing, and then went to Ann Arbor and we saw what happened. With that being said, though, I think that, to your point, this is about both teams and where they're trending right now. I have to be careful about how I say this. Michigan looks very one-dimensional right now. And because of the opponents they played, it didn't matter. They could be one-dimensional. J.J. McCarthy could throw only 8 passes. I think he only threw like 13 to 15 passes against Maryland on this Saturday. But he could, because it was fine. They were still going to win the game because of who they were playing. While Ohio State, the way they're going to have to win that game, I don't have any problems with any of that. They're going to have to give TreVeyon Henderson the ball, and he's had at least 100 yards and a touchdown in all but one game since coming back from injury, and that's because he sat out the Michigan State game in the second half. Marvin Harrison Jr. is Marvin Harrison Jr. Andrew just mentioned it. Emeka Egbuka looks like Emeka Egbuka now, which is, I had an outrageous prediction about that. He didn't have 10 catches, but he looked the way I needed him to look to be comfortable with him being on the field, and he was that. Cade Stover, check. The offensive line isn't a problem anymore. Is it elite? Is it stout? No. But it's not a problem anymore. They can run the ball. Cool. And I think this defense is the best defense in the country. So, dominant defense. Can you run the ball? And hey, Kyle McCord, can you just make the 1, 2, or 3 plays in the moments where a quarterback has to make 1, 2, or 3 plays? And I think that's a recipe for success. Does it mean they win next week? I don't know. We've got a week long of pods to figure that out. But I do think Ohio State is trending in the right direction for how they're going to have to win games this year. While the other team, they're banged up and they look one-dimensional offensively. And we saw where that got Ohio State the last 2 years.
I think it's fair to say that, especially because this offense has gotten healthy.
Yeah.
Like, TreVeyon Henderson's back now for a few weeks. Emeka Buka's now back for a few weeks. The offensive line, Matt Jones had to leave this game briefly today, but came back and finished. Like, Cade Stover missed one game. He's been clearly back. Like, this offense is at its healthiest point of the season, we think. It's just, they have been, the best version of Ohio State seems to be close. And you wonder if Michigan can do that, just the way things have trended the last couple of weeks. But it's still a really talented team. I think you saw what Ohio State, Emeka Buka showed up, I thought, in big ways as they were making those drives. You know what I mean? Like, as Ohio State looked like pretty crisp sometimes today, all the way up to like the 30. And then they'd get to the 30 of Minnesota, and then it just all kind of stalled out. Like, there were just enough things that weren't crisp that it kept stalling out. I don't think they can afford to do that at Michigan. That is, again, that's kind of my thing that, you're talking about 2 years ago. I'm thinking even just this year, like, they've had enough issues finishing drives that it makes you wonder, like, every point you leave on the field in the big house is like magnified, and you can't afford to do that too many times. But having said that, though, we just saw the best version of Kyle McCord last week. And I know it was against Michigan State, but that still means something. You were definitely seeing the best version of TreVeyon Henderson that we've ever seen. You've always got Marvin Harrison Jr. there. I mean, the catch that they didn't give him today, which I think probably, I understand why they didn't get it. That was maybe like the thing of this whole season that described to me how great he is, because the first time I looked at that, I was like, oh, that's way out of bounds. Like, what are they even looking at that for? And then his toes are grazing the grass. Like, it was right there. Like, he's always that close to making the play that changes a game. So they've got all that. And then on top of that, I think they have the best defense in the country. Like, they have the most, like, consistently just smothering defense in the country. And that's going to have to be the thing that travels and gives them the foundation for a win. But I understand we should take history as a lesson here. We've misread this in the past. And I think we learned our lesson on that. And we have more respect at this point for Michigan than we did 2 years ago. So it's going to be tough, but it does seem to be Ohio State fans should probably at least be optimistic about the progress that they've made from week 1 to week 12 to potentially be ready for a game like this. We're going to talk about that a lot more this week on Buckeye Talk. Get that wherever you can find podcasts, and get the text 614-350-3315, $3.99 a month. But first 2 weeks is a free trial. Now is a great time to get it, take you through the game and maybe beyond that for Ohio State.